Hey there everyone, I'm Luke and today we're diving down the Tube of Toons to review Raya and the Last Dragon. So today Raya and the Last Dragon just came out on Disney Plus as Premier Access, and it also came out in theatres and cinemas worldwide. Of course, cinemas are still not open here in the UK, we're still in Lockdown 3.0, Return of the Bojo. And so, Disney Plus it was. Now, I was incredibly excited for this film. I knew I was going to have a great time today. This morning, I watched the WandaVision finale. Then I went to work, came straight back, threw some popcorn on, threw the film on, and I had a great time. Just so you know, this is going to be a non-spoiler review, so if you've not seen the film yet, this is going to help you decide whether it's for you. So just to start off, I'm going to give you a quick, brief summary of the movie. So this film tells the tale of Kumandra, a nation made up of 5 tribes that at one point lived in harmony with dragons. But then the Droon came along, which is this like dark energy that's like opposite of dragons, and it turns both people and dragons into stone. And so the dragons had to come together to create a dragon gem that protects all of Kumandra from the dreaded Droon. Now all this happened 500 years ago, and ever since the Heart tribe has been guarding the dragon gem. Well, this led to a sort of rivalry between the tribes, with all of them wanting ownership of the dragon gem. When the film starts, we see Raya and her father are the guardians of the dragon gem, and then when tension comes to a head between the 5 tribes, the dragon gem is broken, allowing the Droon to come back into the world, putting the world in chaos once again. And so in this film, Raya must seek out the help of the last dragon, Sisu, to reunite all the pieces of the dragon gem and stop the Droon once and for all. And of course, Raya and Sisu meet some friends along the way, pretty much one from each individual tribe, to help them put the gem back together. I'm going to stop it right there. I'm not going to really go into anything more in terms of specific plot elements. And before I move on with this review and I tell you what I thought, whether I liked this movie, well, why don't you do me a favour and like this video? So, what did I think of this film? I loved it. Like I said, I've been waiting for this film for quite a long time, and so I went in with fairly high expectations, and I'm going to be honest, they were met. Like, I really, really enjoyed this film. I think at its heart it has such a nice message, and I think it's told very well. I loved all the different characters, I loved all the different fight scenes. It just looks beautiful, as do most Disney films. That's not really a surprise, but I still also don't think it's something we should overlook. Like, it's just stunning. The film itself is stunning, and I'm definitely gonna watch it again. I've only watched it the once because I wanted to get this review out as fast as I could, but I definitely need to watch it again and take it in again. I think it was definitely worth the £20 I paid for Premier Access. If when the cinemas eventually do open in May, I think, if they are showing this film, I'm definitely going to be there to watch it. I would have just loved to have seen it on the big screen. It is very big and grandiose and cinematic. Yeah, really enjoyed this film. You know, like I said, I loved all the different characters in this film. I do think the characters are maybe slightly stronger than the plot. And 2 of my favourite characters from the film were, of course, Raya herself and that of Namari, who is this sort of antagonist of the film. And I loved the relationship between those 2 characters. I thought it was incredibly developed. I thought it was very real. I loved like their back and forth between one another. The film establishes fairly early on that they have a history, and I do think it was a fairly complex relationship. I think what they pulled off between those 2 characters is definitely something to applaud. I liked how they both had these strikingly different looks about them, and how they sort of felt like they were almost 2 parts of the same coin. I thought the moments of the 2 of them together when they were younger were so sweet. I love both these characters, and I do think Namari is going to come out of this film as a sort of fan favourite for a lot of people. And of course, the Last Dragon herself, Sisu, is an absolutely brilliant character. Obviously just gorgeous to look at. The way they render this dragon is absolutely beautiful. You know, going into this film I was slightly apprehensive about this character. I'd seen a lot of the stuff from the trailers. She seemed like she was basically just Awkwafina's persona in animated form, and while I do like Awkwafina, it does seem to be a little cringy in dragon form. It didn't seem to work for me when I saw some of the jokes in the trailers, and while of course those jokes are still in the film, I feel like they work so much better in the context of the scenes than they did in the trailer. And also they're different takes, they're different line readings, and they're a lot funnier and they work so much better in the context of the film than the versions that we saw in the trailer. So if anybody else took one look at the trailer and was like, oh, I don't think that's for me, maybe give this film a chance, because I was a little unsure about Sisu from the trailer, but in the film itself I think it works really well. And of course there's the friends they make along the way. You've got Boone, Little Noi and Tong. All three of these characters are great. I do think Boone is the standout of the three of them. He was the one introduced first, and so he does get the most personality put into him. Noi, of course, being a baby, she can't speak, so she's never going to get quite the same development as the other characters get. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of great physicality from the character. You can always tell what she's doing and what's happening. And then you've got Tong, who is also a man of few words. So I do think Boone definitely gets the biggest time to shine. He's this like fun, charming little kid. And I also like the bonds that like tie all of them together, in that just like pretty much everyone in this film, they've all been affected by the Droon and they've all lost loved ones to this monstrous force. And of course it makes sense that they all want to band together to help Raya on her journey. I think this film contains some really sweet, heartfelt scenes. It definitely made me a little misty-eyed at points. Like I said, I think this is a really strong film, and I do think the characters are one of the strongest elements in it. Another thing I loved about this film was the action. There was certainly a lot of it to feast your eyes upon. I know the writers of the film were talking about how that this isn't your typical Disney princess movie, it's not a musical. They joked that it was sort of a fighticle, although that reminds me more of a popsicle than it does musical. But I get what they mean. I don't feel like the action in this film feels quite the same as a musical number would in a typical Disney film. The action never feels like it's full on moving the plot forward the way a musical number would. Not that it's bringing the story to a halt, like the story definitely requires action there, but it's not doing the same legwork that a musical number does in explaining like story elements. You know, it's just the story reaches a point where the fight happens. But while there are quite a lot of action sequences in the film, I will say they're all fairly short. They never outstay their welcome. I mean, would I have loved a musical number in this film? Yeah, of course I would. But that's not the film they were making, and the film they made is still really good. But I think one of the best things about the action in this film is how varied it is. It never feels like any of the fight sequences are the same. You've got like lots of different locations that allows them to do fun things. For instance, one of the fights at the start of the film, featuring a young Raya and her father, is in like a really cool environment where they're sort of fighting on this like pond, and they're like having to step between the different stones. That was really visually interesting. You see fights that incorporate like traps and different weapons, and they all feel visually different. There's lots of different like effects and stuff. One of the coolest aspects of the film and the fight scenes is the sword. We first see Raya's father with it, and then later Raya, and it sort of transforms, comes apart and becomes this sort of like chain whip thing and reforms back into a sword, and it's just awesome to watch. And if they make a toy version of it that sort of does anything similar, you know I'm getting it. And of course it glows, because that just makes it even more awesome. And then when the dragon gets involved in the fights, that adds an extra like variation to the fights. No two fights in this film are the same, and I do think that's a really, really strong element of the film. You know, you get lots of sword fights and lots of hand-to-hand combat, and the different characters have different fighting styles. It's really fun to watch. And while I did love this film, it's not without its negatives. It is far from perfect, but one of the main negatives I really wanted to focus on was the pacing. I felt like the film felt a little bit rushed, which is saying something. The film itself is 2 hours long, which is quite a long run time for a Disney film, or any animated film, really. And that is because a lot happens in this film. I can't imagine them cutting this film down any shorter. It was about as tight as they could make it, which in a way is good, but because they travel to so many different locations, you know, we have the 5 different tribes of Kamandra, and there's a bit of back and forth, and it's slightly non-linear. It features a few different flashbacks, that there's so much to happen in this film, and the world that they created in the film is so rich and colourful and vibrant that you just sort of want to explore it, that we don't spend a long time in each location, that you kind of just are left wanting to see more of it. Like, in a way, it was a bit of a double-edged sword, sort of like a backhanded compliment, because I'm like, yeah, the world was so rich, I would have loved to have seen more, but not in a way where it was just like, yeah, I felt satisfied with what I saw, and I'd love to go back and see some more. It was like, no, I actually don't feel like I saw enough. Like, I don't feel like we stayed in the Talon Market long enough. I felt like we wanted to explore what was going on in Spine a little bit more. I would have loved to have seen all these different lands so much more. And that because it was so much zipping around between all these different locations, you could very much tell, like, yeah, when we go to this tribe, it's this action set piece, this tribe has this action set piece. And it was almost sort of like a very much in and out, yeah, we're trying to get the dragon piece, oh, we want to meet a new friend, oh yeah. And all this happens so fast, and none of it's done badly. But I do think it all happens that quickly. Like, it is noticeable that it does start to feel a little bit rushed. I think the strongest parts of the films are definitely its opening, where they explain the story. And then, like, towards the end, you know, like, once the film settles in its location, as it did towards the start in Heart, and towards the end in Fang, it definitely seemed to flow a lot better. But there was a little bit in the middle where we were sort of like jumping around between all the different locations, and you could feel it. You could feel the film was rushing ahead and trudging on with the story. And I think sometimes you just wanted to stop and breathe and be like, oh, let's have a look around. And there was no time for that. You know, the film actually spent a lot of time in between the lands on the river, which was nice, and there was a lot of nice moments in that. But I think maybe had they spread some of those out and maybe they'd stopped in each location a little bit more, I don't know, I think maybe it might have been a little bit more satisfying and maybe would have felt slightly less rushed. But I mean, maybe that was intentional. Maybe it's because the characters themselves are rushing to get all the pieces of the Dragon Gem and rushing to reunite them and save Kumandra from the Droon. You know, maybe that was intentional. And maybe on a rewatch, I'm not going to find it quite as bad. I don't know. I've only watched it the once, like I said. But on a first watch, that was a takeaway I took from it. The film felt rushed. And it is a shame, but it's definitely there. And I did say that was the main negative I wanted to talk about, because there are a few other minor ones, definitely not as big, but they were all a little bit more spoilery, so I'm not going to talk about them here. And I think I'm definitely going to be coming back to do a spoiler breakdown, a spoiler review of this film, because there's so much I want to talk about. And I do have quite a lot of questions. That is something I will say. Maybe that's one thing I can say if I keep it vague, is that the ending of this film, I have questions about it. I don't want to say I don't fully understand what happened. I know what happened. Maybe I don't fully understand some of the choices that they made. Like, it was still satisfying, but it did leave me scratching my head, like, why did they do it like that? Overall, my final thoughts, like I said, I loved this film. I'm definitely going to be watching it again. I think I'm going to try and get my family to watch it. I mean, I definitely paid £20 for it, and while I do think a film like that is worth the £20, I definitely want to support the industry. I'm definitely going to be getting my complete money's worth from that £20. I'm going to watch it so many times in the next 3 months before it comes available on Disney Plus at no extra cost. Do I think it's worth it to other people that aren't as Disney mad as I am? I do. I think it was a really good film. I do think it was a strong one. If you're not normally into a Disney musical, you might like this one because it's a fight-sicle. It's, you know, it's an action film. It's not too over the top with the action. If you're someone that isn't normally into action, I still think you'll find things to like in this film. But if you do like action, all that stuff is definitely there. You know, if the cinemas are open near you and it's safe to go to them, definitely check this film out. And if not, and if you have access to Disney Plus, I would definitely consider buying it on Premier Access. Like, there were so many things to love about this film. I think it just looked beautiful. Seeing all the different tribes and all the different, like, Southeast Asian influences that the film was imbued with. There was a lovely bit towards the start that was done in this sort of like paper cutout puppet style. It was just beautiful to watch. I mean, and that is something that is clear from the trailers, but I will say just watching this film as a whole, I just say it was so nice to watch this film. I've been missing watching films. We've not had many films come out in this last year, and to get to sit at home and watch the brand new Disney movie, oh, that was great. I cannot recommend this film enough. Alright everyone, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. It really helps out the channel and lets it get seen by more people. And if you've not done so yet, why don't you hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell to be notified the next time we dive down the Tube of Toons. The next video I've got coming up is going to be the myth behind the monsters, and it's going to be all about zombies and witchcraft and all that good stuff. I do feel like this film doesn't have a lot of hype behind it, and like I mentioned in my trailer breakdown, they released it on the same day as the WandaVision finale, which I feel like has had all eyes and ears on it on the internet, and it just seems like an odd decision to release those two big things on the same day, because one's at no extra cost and one is £20, $30. Although I was wrong, in my trailer breakdown I was speculating that the finale might have been 2 hours long and it was almost like having two movies compete with one another. Well, I've watched the WandaVision finale now. It was about 45 minutes long, 50 including the credits. So while it isn't two big movies being released on the same day, I still think WandaVision has managed to outshine it in the coverage I've been seeing online today. But don't let that stop you. You can still watch Raya and the Last Dragon if you want. Alright everyone, thanks for watching. Cheers. Thanks for watching Tube of Toons. If you want more from the channel, hit subscribe. If you want to keep up to date with what's going on, follow us on our socials. Hope you liked it. Cheers.